What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Parts Unknown podcast. I'm, of course, the tribal chief of Ringside Intel, Jason Burgos, and with me, as always, is the Big Daddy Cool of our show, the Florida wise man himself, Jose Maldonado, Senor H. Wood. How are you doing today?
Feeling regal on this fine day. We got an air of royalty on the pod. You know, we got a lot to discuss in terms of kings and queens, and we're bringing our own little flair to the kingdom to this wrestling kingdom, so to speak. So feeling good.
And, just to go through it early, so we're going to, on this episode of the Parts of the Podcast, we're going to, of course, do a lot of King and Queen of the Ring talk. While we're recording, it just ended like an hour or so ago, but it may be different when you're watching or listening to this. We're also going to do some solid bit of AEW talk. They were in the headlines for different regions. Mercedes Mone made a comment saying she's the greatest woman wrestler of all time. That should be worthwhile to talk about. Got some stuff on the news on the AEW TV deal. We're also going to talk a little bit about Ricky Starks' future in AEW. Is he WWE-bound? Also, some interesting comments Will Ospreay made about Ricochet and how maybe WWE has misused him. Maybe he's got some truth to that. So we're going to talk all about that during this episode of the show. But first, let's get into it. King and Queen of the Ring 2024. For maybe if you're wherever you are listening to us, just a quick rundown. Gunther won King of the Ring. Nia Jax won Queen of the Ring. Of course, Cody Rhodes defended his title successfully. Sami Zayn defended his title successfully. Liv Morgan is now the new women's champion on Raw. She beat Becky Lynch. And on the pre-show, Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair defeated Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. And no surprise there. But, man, I was one pick away from a completely correct prediction. I had Randy Orton win the King of the Ring. He let me down. WWE shocked me. But first, let's talk about the King and Queen of the Ring winners. What are your thoughts? Did WWE make the right choice with Gunther and Nia Jax?
Dude, you were almost the guru, man. You had the hat going and everything, the fortune telling. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people were with you on that, and kind of they threw a swerve with Gunther winning. Not that he's not deserving. Gunther has been on a hell of a tear the last few years. Definitely not upset that he won the King of the Ring, but I think a lot of people were expecting Randy, more so for what would be to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That the potential SummerSlam main event with Cody would have been, a ready-made story given their history and their legacy, pardon the pun. But it seemed like it was the way to go. But Gunther winning it, can't be mad at that. You kind of. And that paints an interesting road for him, too, because you kind of see the writing on the wall that maybe this is the next step for him. Because, Damian, as much as we love him, the championship win was more of a thank you for the fine work that he's been doing. I don't think anybody's foreseeing him being a long-term champion. And if Drew happens to win, that's where it gets a little interesting. With the match that was announced at Clash at the Castle. But Gunther is really setting himself up to be maybe the next world champ. It could realistically happen at SummerSlam. And Nia winning, I love it. I love the pick. I think a lot of people saw that happening. Her beating Bianca was a really big feather in her cap. And Lyra, I want to say I love Lyra Valkyria. Loved her work in NXT. Love how they presented her so far on the main roster. Kind of presented her as kind of a big deal that can make some waves. The perfect foil for Nia in this match, but it was Nia's match to lose. And yeah, I love the pick of her as the queen. I love the jerk speech afterwards. Kind of not take your congratulations and stick them somewhere else. I love her character. She's been tremendous, and I think she was the right choice for queen for sure.
Yeah, it's part of why I picked her. It just there's nothing really for Bianca to gain in this. Nia's been really good for a long time since her return. She's been much more she's been better in the ring, good on the mic. It just speaking of deserve, she deserved it. That said, I not an avid NXT watcher and viewer and stuff like that. You much more than I am. I've been really impressed with Lyra Valkyria. She has a great look. That match was really entertaining, really good match, different styles, and Lyra did a really good job with a veteran who, it's always an interesting thing in trying to be in there with a big person and a powerhouse like that. But so since that was more predictable, I'll talk about. I was really surprised by the Gunther thing, and again, in my predictions on Ringside, I mentioned all the signs were there that Gunther probably would be the guy that wins, but then they made the announcement about that the winner gets the champion of their brand at SummerSlam, and Gunther versus Damian Priest doesn't have a lot of sizzle to it just because they're two heels. And they may still do Cody versus Randy. They even kind of had a little moment on SmackDown, so they may be going that way anyway. But I was surprised by that. It just, but yeah, Gunther, they've been building towards him being one of the main guys for quite some time. I thought it probably would have hurt him a little bit if he lost to Randy, but still was in the finals. But that wasn't the case. He gets the win. Surprise! They have two bad guys win it. Not bad choices at all. Two fantastic performances, stuff like that.
And if I may, you touched on something really interesting, that the ending to the match, it really does leave it open to a potential Randy Cody thing, because people thought Randy's shoulder was up. I'm not sure if that was part of the finish or not, but that can be addressed, and that could be a way for them to pivot to Cody versus Randy, kind of deserving that shot anyway. So it's definitely open for sure. You definitely touched on that. It's true.
And you mentioned it a little bit too, and that's where we're going next. Like, should Damian Priest kind of be worried? I would be surprised to see Damian Priest. I think Damian will get past Drew at Clash of the Castle, which they announced during King and Queen of the Ring, just because Drew just won a couple months ago. I get what you're saying, but it would seem like such a waste for Damian to lose already. But I just feel more likely we're probably going to have another Punk interference and to set up that match at SummerSlam, which I hope is what the plan is, and that's just such a big match, and that's fascinating too. But I just don't like his chances against Gunther. It just feels like that's not gonna happen. Like, he's not gonna win. I'd love to see the surprise. We're both fans of him being a Hispanic man from New York, just like us. So, what are your thoughts? Should Damian Priest be very worried? Like, is his reign likely to be done in August?
I think so. I'd be worried if I were him. The story that they've been telling with Judgment Day, kind of, having cracks in the foundation, that kind of, the tea leaves are there that it might not be the longest reign, just for that reason. That might be his story heading into SummerSlam. Not to say that it'll happen. And honestly, I would love to see Punk cost Drew again in his hometown and have Drew go absolutely nuclear with the reaction. But honestly, I think Drew is going to get the hometown win and get the title there. Even if it doesn't happen there, I'm wondering if between Clash at the Castle and SummerSlam, there is another event there, if there's somebody that might be able to take the title off of Damian there. Like, they already kind of, used up Jey Uso's shot. That would have been my pick. But, I'm really not sure where that is. But I don't think I love Damian Priest. Nothing against the guy. I love his work, and he absolutely deserves this reign. But something about it just doesn't scream like it's going to be long term. I don't see it getting past SummerSlam if it does go him and Gunther. But I honestly see him losing it sooner and them setting up a more interesting match for Gunther. I don't think Damian's reign is going to be very long at all.
Yeah, the Drew. That's another element of the Drew thing that makes it so unpredictable. Just because they had Clash the Castle last year, he was the main event. He lost that too. It would be surprising for back-to-back main event losses. That's a tough one to predict too. And going in hindsight, I mean, just looking at let's say Damian can make it to SummerSlam. That's still not terrible. April, May, June, July, close to maybe 5 months, maybe not all the way, but a little bit over 4 months as champion. That's still pretty good, for a reign. And plus for me, I'm very much in favor of these shorter reigns. I'm kind of over it. I don't need a year plus reign for so many people. We've seen so many of those reigns. I'd be completely fine 3 or 4 month reigns, and plus there's just so many deserving people. I'd like to see AJ Styles be champion again. That's not for me, but I'm sure a lot of people that like to see Randy Orton get closer to John Cena and Ric Flair and their record. There's some men who want to see John Cena beat the record. I'd love to see Kevin Owens get another chance at being champion. So I'd like to see some of these shorter reigns just for those reasons. But final thoughts, like, was there anything that was a big surprise that you were happy with? Overall thoughts on the matches and just the card in general in Saudi this weekend?
I love Liv Morgan winning. I love the fact that you picked that correctly. I think that was the right call. We were worried about that a couple of podcasts ago, how, putting the belt back on Becky was that maybe, the boring choice. But the only caveat we had is that if this sets up a win for Liv, then that's perfect, and that's what ended up happening. And, no shine off of Becky. It was, Dom's interference, which was hilarious every time he shows up. They did it the right way, and now Liv gets to brag a little bit more. Her revenge tour is ongoing. Love to see it. Love the character work from Liv, and it sets up the obvious clash with Rhea when she comes back. This gives Liv a nice, decent amount of time to have a reign, have a few challengers, have some fun matches, and then Rhea come and just wipe the floor with her like everybody's hoping that she will. you know, whether that happens at SummerSlam or down the road, depending on Rhea's injury, that remains to be seen. But right call, putting the title on Liv, and I think she's going to be a fantastic champion, just bragging all day long on Monday night. So I love that choice.
And it's funny, too, because if you missed it, this week they announced that SummerSlam in 2026 is going to be in Minnesota, and it's going to be a 2-night event, just similar to WrestleMania. But, man, this year's SummerSlam, which I, again, will be at, my first time at a SummerSlam, my first in-person WWE in, like, 20 years, is shutting up. Man, has a lot of possibilities. That this could have been a 2-nighter. You probably think, you know, Rhea and Rhea might be back in time for that. You might have Punk and McIntyre, and Cody and Orton, maybe if they still do that or not, or Gunther and Damon. A lot of good fights, a lot of good matchups. Yeah, and my final thoughts is I was entertained. I enjoyed it. A lot of good matches, and let me just give a shout out to, I thought they had the chance to steal the show, and I felt they did. Sami Zayn, Bronson Reed, and Chad Gable, to me, was the best match on the card. Fun match, really cool stuff, how they did it, how they added the storyline with Otis and Gable, and then the finish, and how over Sami is there, which he gives them a unique star for Islamic fans, stuff like that, which is great. But moving on from there, let's talk about Mercedes Mone. Now, because I always mess up. Every time I read it, I want to say Mercedes Mone. But, I mean, Monet. Excuse me, it's Monet. Excuse me. I messed it up already. I always want to say Monet. It's Monet. But she had an interesting thought. You know, we're recording this before Double or Nothing in her match with Willow Nightingale. She told the Ringer many things, but also she mentioned to them that she firmly believes, 100% in her words, she is the greatest women's wrestler of all time. So as you can expect, we did an article on Ringside. Social media wasn't a fan of these thoughts. Some people were in favor, but there were a lot of people that had some funny responses. You can find that on the site. But first thoughts, is she even top 5? I mean, let alone, we know the best ever. Is she even top 5? I'm going to throw out some names out there. Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley, Bayley, Trish Stratus, Lita. Is Sasha even top 5, let alone the best ever?
Well, I got her firmly at 4th on the 4 horsewomen.
Wow.
So
okay.
top 5 is going to be a problem. Look, I'm sure it's a ton of fun for her to go out there and say what she said, and I'm sure it was all by design for the reaction that she's getting. It's getting all the kind of, you know, buzz, and I'm sure that she was hoping for ahead of her match. But if we're being realistic, I don't. No knock on Sasha. She's a tremendous performer. She's much better as a heel. Her heel work is always tremendous. Her rivalry with Bayley's legendary, but I think there's way too many names, even among her contemporaries, for her to like firmly say she's the greatest of all time. I got, like I said, I got Charlotte, Becky, and Bayley above her. I'd put probably Trish above her. Lita's in that ballpark. And if we're including international, there's plenty of Japanese wrestlers to consider. You know, it's a lot. So for her to say that, she's made her mark on the industry. You know, she kind of passed the torch to Bianca, who's another one that's in the conversation. At WrestleMania, they had, you know, that WrestleMania main event. She could, you know, hang her hat on that. But greatest of all time, nah, sorry, not giving it to Sasha. Yeah. Despite her confidence in that opinion, don't agree.
And nothing taking nothing away from, she's achieved a lot of things, especially as being an African American woman, a woman of color, and what she's done for that element of the business. But when you're having these debates and when you're talking the greatest of all time, you have to really, you get into the weeds on these things. And when you get into the weeds on Sasha, there's a lot of issues. I mean, firstly, her health. She's banged up all the time. And that's something that Becky deserves a lot of. Charlotte deserves some credit for. Bayley, big time, like durability and staying out there. That's what makes this industry what it is. That's why Ric Flair is so legendary. The guy's always there. Hulk Hogan was always there. You know, so her durability has always been an issue. And honestly, nothing against it, because some of the people that might be in front of her, the same could be said for. But she's been playing the same character for like 10 years. Like, still doing this and still, like, doing the same character. You could say Mercedes Mone, but she's still Sasha Banks. It's the same character, but that can be said for Charlotte, but Charlotte is a spectacular athlete. She's done some other things, those elements. Bayley and Becky deserve so much. Trish, too. Yeah. Evolving their characters over the years. Like, yeah. Becky's changed her character different times. Bayley's evolved. That's the hardest thing. It's easy to play the hits. It's easy to do the same thing over and over. It's the truly great ones who can evolve their character and change it. That's why I love Trisha's recent reign. Like her douchey, I'm a legend stuff was great, and she was still in pretty good shape to be entertaining in a match. Sasha's been the same character, and then Lita maybe isn't the same athlete or even wrestler, but what she was able to do in terms of her high flying was completely groundbreaking and stuff like that. Yeah, I have Sasha at 6, 7 for me, so it's just wild to have her saying she's number 1 all time. But also in a separate interview for Us Magazine, she complained that that fans on the internet are just haters. The problem is why there's this tribalism in the industry, which there is tribalism now with AEW, WWE, that they're too much on their phones, which again probably there's some truth to it, that they're not living in the real world. Again, maybe some truth, but I don't think in any industry, entertainment industry, you should be saying, the people that are paying the pay-per-views, paying the tickets, watching the shows when your ratings and your tickets are down, that you guys are not living in the real world and you're too much on your phones. Complaining about the people that are helping pay for you is never a good idea. Fortunately for her, she's in a world where she's a bad guy, and that's where she's kind of going, so maybe it benefits her. But what are your thoughts? Again, is this another reason why she doesn't kind of get it and isn't the GOAT of women's wrestling?
Yeah, spot on. I think you hit the nail right on the head with that last assessment there. It's focusing on the wrong group. There is a vocal minority in every fandom that is, whether it be toxic, whether it be tribalism, whatever you want to call it, that definitely exists. And it absolutely exists in professional wrestling, especially with AEW and WWE. But focusing on that and commenting on that, not the smartest move, to your point, when you're trying to draw positive attention to your brand. And that's one of the major reasons they brought her on to AEW, is because she is that big name with a lot of clout and a lot of, goodwill that she could bring onto there. But if we're being frank and honest, her run in AEW so far has been disappointing, to say the least. So for her to be saying comments like that is definitely not going to win any favor for any of those that have kind of tuned her out. It's whether it's in character or not the wisest move. If you want to look at somebody who's gone about it the right way, is somebody like Adam Copeland, who has been in AEW, and even though he hasn't set the brand on fire, I don't think anybody's capable of that. That's a whole other conversation. But he hasn't gone out of his way to kind of start blaming people or start pointing fingers, and he's just focused on checking a lot of boxes and having a lot of terrific, entertaining matches. And good on him to be able to do that and make it a part of the week to week. For Mercedes to say those kind of comments, it's not the way to go. I don't think it's going to do her any favors. It's not doing AEW any favors. I don't think that's what they signed her on for. If this is the ambassador that's going to be, if she's going to be the ambassador of the women's division going forward, she's not off to a good start, and this doesn't help her any in that regard.
And it won't get her any flack because she works for a person who's going to complain and blame the fans too. That's there's a silliness of it, and I think you nailed it, just how underwhelming her run has been. And in these interviews, she's talking about, I feel freedom and all these kind of things. We're seeing why they kind of try to like a coach, just you play to the strengths and away from the weaknesses, because she has clear weaknesses. That's another thing. Again, getting into the weeds on the GOAT talk, her promo skills,
it's exposed her. It really has.
Yeah, AEW has badly exposed her promo skills. It's been doing the same thing for 10 years. The only difference she did in 10 years was ha 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 laugh. That was it. That's all she's done. Bayley, Becky, Charlotte, they're all way better promos. Rhea, Rhea's a way better character and performer, so many levels above her in a short amount of time. It's just absolute silliness. But moving on from there, of course, wherever you're watching, listening to the show, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know your thoughts on what Sasha said, what she thinks, how she thinks her place in women's wrestling is, what you thought of King and Queen of the Ring 2024. Moving on from there, continuing on the AEW tilt a little bit, Dave Meltzer recently reported in a new Wrestling Observer newsletter radio that because it's been a big story in basketball this week about how TNT, which is the parent company for TNT, is Warner Brothers Discovery, is probably going to lose NBA. They're probably going to lose their section of it to NBC. Also, Amazon Prime is going to be getting NBA after 2024-2025 season. ESPN's still going to have it. But he was making the point that not having that value of the NBA is probably going to cost the parent company some money from cable providers, streamers, because they're like, we're not going to pay more money for TNT when you guys don't have NBA. We're not, that's going to hurt them. And in fact, and because of that, AEW, their TV deal, which we've heard so many things about, there's some talk. There was even talk early, I think late last year, about maybe it might be $1 billion deal over multiple years. Like, they probably won't get the same kind of money. And that TNT, with the now limited funds they have, they'll probably use it for college football. They'll probably maybe try to woo a UFC or something like that. What are your thoughts on that? Like, if their AEW doesn't get the $1 billion deal, and I don't see it. I think maybe they'll get something that's like $800 million, which is still nothing to sneeze at. But this is a company that's kind of losing money. We've all seen the pictures on social media about the ticket sales at events. Pay-per-view isn't a thing anymore. That's the funniest thing about that. They're still doing pay-per-view. I get why they're doing it, but everyone is kind of moving it away from it outside of them and like UFC, and that they're not doing live shows. That's a little revenue source, So, is this something that Tony Khan and AEW should be really worried about if they don't get the kind of big money, big raise in the TV deal they thought?
Yeah, it's such an interesting situation for so many angles. And you would think that with the NBA going away, that would benefit AEW because they'd be the big fish on that network. But to your point, if that network is no longer must-see, which the NBA makes it a must-see and a must-have for a lot of packages, that's where it hurts them in the long run because, Warner Brothers might be trying to, hold their wallet a little bit. In terms of the pay-per-view, I think, it really feels like that model has been a placeholder for this new deal. And if they do end up signing again with Warner Brothers, we're probably going to see them on HBO Max, which would be tremendous for AEW in that regard. That'd be a hell of a boost and would resolve that problem. And, that's where their value really lies, is that they are content. Professional wrestling historically has loyal fans, has tons of content. AEW has been around. I think they're celebrating, their 4th anniversary, 5th anniversary with Double or Nothing. So, they're building a steady, string of hits. Their hit reel is getting pretty thick. And so to have that, available on a platform like HBO Max where they can have wrestling fans kind of, subscribe for that reason, kind of like what a lot of WWE fans are doing for Peacock, that's where a lot of benefit for AEW lies. In terms of, the size of that deal, it's going to be really interesting to see what Warner Brothers comes with because, if they do lose NBA and they don't have, AEW is not WWE where they can be the flagship of a company, of a network. At least I don't believe so. If they do end up getting a college football or some other, like a UFC or something to help, where they can complement that, they'll be in a much better position. But if it's just AEW trying to hold that afloat, that could be, a lot less than what they were hoping for. And, I'm sure they'll be fine for a bit, but, it might not be what they've been touting all this time with the upcoming TV deal.
And it's bad too because it's a like if AEW was coming into a situation like this in 2022, they'd have a lot of leverage. They'd have a lot. It's a product that's hot. You recently signed Dan Bryan, CM Punk added. They had a lot more leverage. Now they're going to those negotiations with the stuff like I mentioned on social media with the half full arenas, with the lower ratings that they're having some of their lowest ratings in multiple years now. And then they don't have the leverage, and that's the thing. Like if TNT's at a place, and if you've been following like the industry and stuff like that, when this new CEO who came over from Discovery, I think it's David Zaslav, he's in the business of cutting costs. Like he's trying to cut costs and make up some of the losses that Warner Brothers had over the years. So he's not gonna cry about if he lost AEW. Like, and that's the thing. If they can't get on TNT, where are they going? Like Fox is not gonna sign AEW. They're not going to USA because Raw's SmackDown's gonna be there. They're not going to Netflix. You want to go to Amazon Prime? I guess that's an option. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe Amazon might think about that, but that's unsure because they're trying to have like a more of adult content. Who knows? Maybe that hurts them in certain things. Where you gonna go to CW network, like sci-fi?
They can't even do that. NXT is going to be on CW, so that's out.
Yeah, that's where the rumors are. So it's just like they're in a bad spot. So TNT says, we want to give you $830 million for 5 years. That's it. That's what they're gonna get. Like they can't go, oh fine, that's not good enough for us. We want to go somewhere else. You're not gonna get much more. And if you get the same, it's not gonna be the same branding as, like I mentioned, a CW and a sci-fi. So they're in a tough spot, and they have no leverage because of how questionable the product has been, and it's a shame. And going to the idea of questionable moves, Ricky Starks, one of the few homegrown talents they have, hasn't just been used. Like it's just kind of been sitting on the sidelines doing nothing for like multiple weeks now. It seems like the classic moment and the strategy of, well, he's leaving. We know his contract's ending soon. He's not going to stay. He doesn't want to talk contract extension. So we're just kind of going to bury him. We're going to bury him. They're not going the other route where you're just taking a bunch of losses, which is in a benefit for him. But that's where it seems like it's going. He's mentioned recently that he doesn't even know why he's not on TV. He doesn't know why he's not being at events, and he's not going to be at Double Nothing. Instead, he was at Dynasty or stuff like that. They randomly end the tag team with Big Bill. Big Bill's now with Jericho, which I'm fine with that situation. But how do you just have a team that you build up to be tag team champions and they just split up randomly? It doesn't make any sense. And he recently spoke about, because he was clearly at WrestleMania. He was loudly and proudly celebrating Cody Rhodes' win and got caught on video, and he had no problem defending it. And he made a point in the interview saying how, Cody has had a huge effect on his career and his family, and bringing them up and uplifting them. And we all know he was at backstage one time. Like, it just seems that all the signs are he's going to WWE, which I pray he does, because talk about untapped potential. Is a WWE move inevitable, and how good can he be on WWE? As I mentioned and have in our script, like I think he could be what Jericho leaving WCW, going to WWE. Like, in terms of really untapped potential, and you put him in the right hands, and man, he's got the look. Yeah, he can maybe be bigger. That's great. He can talk. He's got passion, and he can wrestle. Like, can he be this generation's Jericho in terms of making a huge impact based on a move?
The potential is definitely there, I think this is the worst kept secret. I think all parties involved have resigned to the fact that he is leaving and headed to WWE. I'm sure Cody put in a good word for him, not that he had to, because the talent and the potential is absolutely there for Ricky. And Tony, I believe, has known for quite a while that Ricky was leaving as well, which is why Ricky has not been, has not sniffed any airtime lately. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he absolutely has the potential to be. Will it be as impactful to AEW as the Jericho move was? That remains to be seen. But Starks is a ready-made talent for WWE. He has the tools. He has the look, the charisma, the promo skills. He can go in the ring. You could plug him into anywhere. You want to plug him into NXT for when he first gets there, he'll shine there. You want to put him straight to the main roster. There's the hardcore fans will accept that, and a lot of the casual fans, I'm sure, will warm up to him really quick if he's given the. He has somebody who's comparable to Ricky's situation. I think is somebody like LA Knight, to where LA Knight's promo skills were always like well known, but they were just never presented under the Vince regime. Once they started actually letting him cut loose and really just giving in to the fan reaction to him, we see the star that he became. Same thing can happen with Ricky. Ricky, given the opportunity, can get himself over. He proved it in AEW from the first time that he picked up a mic. It's just like, who is this guy? And like, give him a mic every single week. He's that kind of a talent. So with that kind of potential, the sky's the limit for him in WWE. And he's, made it pretty known that he's, a lot of the ties are there. So. Yeah, dissatisfied is a great way to put it. I think it's happening really soon, and I think Ricky has the potential to go really far in WWE, and I hope it happens. He's great.
Yeah, and I think and I've seen people mention NXT. I think that's a crazy idea. I think you mentioned he's ready to go. He's main roster ready, and he's not a young guy. I think he's like early 30s and stuff like that. But he's got enough seasoning, and they can take him to another level. And again, what this new regime has done is accentuate the strengths and try to hide weaknesses and stuff like that. Like, they're not making Shinsuke and Io Sky have to speak English in promos. Let him speak Japanese and give him subtitles. Same thing. So that he has the poses, and he has the look, and he has all those things that makes him singular and different. And that's what you need to stand out on a roster like that. And it just it's just another key thing, and the reason why I mentioned Jericho, and we haven't seen it. We've seen a little bit, but I think they would need to do it with him, and just like they did with Jericho, they need to have a little bit of a campaign to promote him coming in. And I don't mean the videos where it's a highlight reel of them and they talk in front of the camera. No, like hints, so similar to what they're doing with this whole Wyatt Six thing, like little vignettes and stuff that go old school. And this is a group that knows the value of that. And I think if they went old school with vignettes or some kind of hype thing or some kind of viral thing like they did, it would make him similar to that. But again, wherever you're watching, listening, like, share, subscribe, comment. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the possibility of Ricky Starks maybe going to WWE? Can he shine? Can he be a big star there, bigger than he has been in AEW? But last comment, talking about the using talent, Will Ospreay, who's gotten off to a real good start with AEW. He's generating a fan base here in the U.S., although it's not having an effect on the ratings, unfortunately. He had an interesting comment this week about Ricochet, and you can find it online. He's had many matches with Ricochet, and they're very similar in terms of talent and abilities, athleticism. He said the fact that they only value his time for under 5 minutes, which is going towards the whole that thing they're doing on Twitter with these 5-minute matches. He's the champion of that. It only airs on Twitter. Is appalling to me. I just want people to remember who he is. If you go back and look at 2012 to 2013, Dragon Gate, Ricochet, he was untouchable at the time. When it came to this generation of high flyers, he was the greatest. He's the greatest high flyer ever. I know it sounds weird, but I do include him. I do put him on the same level as Rey Mysterio. And this is coming from a guy who is as high flyer, athletic, and gifted as there is in the world right now. A lot of people think Will Ospreay is maybe the best wrestler in the world. Is he right? Has WWE bungled Ricochet, or are there some flaws in Ricochet that's maybe hurt him?
There's a lot of truth to what Ospreay said. He's not completely wrong, and he's really not talking out of line, because we know that you mentioned him and Ricochet have a history. Their match in New Japan absolutely blew up and went viral. Everybody, a lot of wrestling fans know the clip that we're talking about. They have that level of talent that just those exchanges in the ring are enough to get everybody's attention, not just wrestling fans, but everyone. Ricochet is that level of a talent and that level of a high flyer. If we're talking strictly speaking high flyers, he is one of the greatest of all time. Is he a Rey Mysterio level? That's tough to say, because Rey Mysterio is one of the GOATs, period. But, in terms of like skill set, move set, things that he's been able to do in the ring, both in WWE and before that, Ricochet is absolutely in that conversation. And for Will Ospreay to say that, he's somebody who holds a lot of weight in terms of that conversation, because he's one of the GOATs as well. That being said, I understand Ricochet's frustration with the that Twitter situation is so weird, because it's obviously being done for money and attention. It sounds like it came from Twitter for them to kind of, hey, let's do something. And so the short matches and everything like that, who'd be perfectly suited for that kind of a match? Ricochet, because he can get an insane amount of attention with a very short match. So he's perfectly suited for that. That's unfortunate for him, because it may take away from something else better that he could be doing on the main roster. But honestly, he hasn't been presented in the worst way. He may not be the best promo, and we all know that the Drew clip from a couple of years ago really took the wind out of his sails. But, he's been present on Monday nights. His win-loss record may not be the most sterling, but he has been presented in a way that is on the level of where he's at right now. It's not like he's been completely ignored. He is a valuable part of the roster. The crowd still loves him for the fact that he's so athletic and his matches are so entertaining. So, for Will to come to bat for him like that, I understand where he's coming from. I don't think the situation is as bad as they make it out to be. But, for Will to point that out to him, I'm not sure what Ricochet's contract situation might be, but, if he's not the happiest with his presentation in WWE, I think he's somebody that could thrive either going back to Japan, or, AEW could put some use to him, against some of those talent that they have there, whatever the case may be. But I don't think Ricochet's situation is as bad as it seems. But I do think that Ospreay has some merit in what he's saying, and for him to go to bat for Ricochet, given their history, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's and you said it that it's not like he's been there's been moments, yes, he hasn't been used, but I mean, he's won championships. He's been in big matches. Like, he's gotten highlight moments and focus moments. Yeah, but and again, it has to be mentioned too. Like, this is probably the best roster they've ever had. I mean, this is a fantastic roster, and the case could be made for a lot of people. Maybe they can get more time and opportunities and stuff like that. And again, in that way, he's on TV, and that's still important. That's still valuable to get TV minutes, because that's not the case in AEW. There's a lot of people that are much better than some of the people that we're seeing on TV each week. Jericho, that should be on TV instead of certain other people.
Right.
So like Satnam Singh, like why am I seeing him? Why am I seeing this guy? So that said, I think the one thing and it's surprising too in the Triple H regime, we could chalk up a lot of things to Vince. And we all have seen in the last 2 years how much better the product is. A lot was to him. But the one thing that blows my mind is they still haven't made him a heel. Like, this guy, I talk about my wife, like, when it comes to dressing, there's Cody and Ricochet got some nice fits. Like, this guy can dress. So he's got a good-looking guy. Like, just let him be a douchebag. Just let's see how it is. That's the same thing I think that I'm surprised they haven't done in Montez Ford. Like, that's often the thing that helps galvanize a boost in interest and a run. You go bad. I can't believe that. Like, Ricochet has been a babyface like the entire time, and like, if there's any questions about why he hasn't maybe hit another upper echelon, the fact that they've never pulled the trigger on that is stunning to me. This isn't John Cena where he's selling crazy merch. Like, it's weird how he's been stuck in this spot and he's never been like, maybe he just doesn't want to do it, and they've acquiesced. And they're like, okay, you want to be a good guy, fine. This is kind of you're going to hit a ceiling, but maybe that's what it is. But it is stunning, and I think he can really take off to a whole other level. He's just you take Carmelo Hayes' personality lately, and you put it on Ricochet's skills, man, you got something amazing right there. And at least it's a second tier star that can be used. So
it's worth a shot. They have nothing to lose at this point. They really should give it a shot, and it might work a lot better than they're expecting.
Yeah, and look what we've seen with McIntyre. I mean, like, this, letting him be a heel, which we've seen before, but letting him do it in his way has been fantastic. This is the best version of him, I think. I know you're a big fan. He's never been much for me most of the time, but I enjoy seeing him now. And that wasn't a thing for me a while ago. So let Ricochet do his interpretation of a bad guy. Let's see what it is. Like, it could be so good. But, I mean, that's it for us this week on this edition of the Parts Unknown podcast. Again, please, wherever you're at, listening, watching, please like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you may be watching us and listening on MSN, please follow us on MSN. Even if you're watching on Flipboard, maybe, please subscribe. It's more of our content on Ringside Intel. But until next time, I am Jason Burgos. He is Jose Maldonado. Until then, bye-bye.